The love of a family is life's greatest blessing, was my parents' favorite quote. They even had it framed in my bedroom and bathroom, so I could see it each time I got out of bed or while staring at my bathroom's mirror. Cliche, I know. I had everything a teen could want: an awesome dad and a loving mom who always created time out of their schedules for me. We didn't have much back then, but I was happy and comfortable. However, things began to change when my baby brother was born. He was born a week before my 12th birthday, and as if that wasn't enough, all the attention and love, or so I thought, shifted to him. On the morning of my 12th birthday, I sat up and waited for my parents to burst in with balloons and gifts, but the door never opened. I then got up and rushed to their room thinking they were still in bed, only to find my mom fast asleep and my dad rocking my baby brother to sleep. They remembered later at night, after I reminded them that it was my birthday, and they apologized for not getting me anything. My dad said, "Sorry, sweetie, but we have a new baby, and we stayed up all night holding that milk bottle. But we'll make it up to you, Bunny." After another round of reminding him of his promise, my dad grudgingly took me to the park. Which 12-year-old goes to the park for their birthday? I'm not a dog or 5. I didn't want to go to the park, but it was better than nothing. At least, I was glad I was away from the baby's cries. On the way back home, my dad told me about how they had tried so hard to have another baby after me, but it never worked out. "This is a miracle. I'm sorry about how your birthday turned out this year, but things will return to normal very soon," he said. Well, that was a lie. A few months before I turned 13, the family-owned business hit it big and we became rich. We moved to a new neighborhood meant for rich people, and I changed schools as well. My parents became so busy that they would come home when I was asleep and leave before I got up. They got a nanny to take care of my brother, and I only got to see them during the weekends. Like this wasn't enough, they spent more time with my brother during the weekends than with me. My 13th birthday came and the same thing happened. They forgot, blamed it on their tight work schedule, and promised to make it up to me. Only that this time, I decided not to remind them to make it up to me. The funny thing was, they didn't forget my brother's birthday, and it was just a week before mine. The same cycle repeated when I turned 14, and it was then that I realized they didn't care for me as much as they used to. There was almost no happiness in my life until I met Lucas. Lucas's dad played golf on Saturdays with my dad, while his mom loved to go shopping with my mom. Each time they came over, Lucas would tag along. I didn't like him at first because I thought he was a jerk. He was trying so hard to show off, but he kept making efforts to get close to me, and I started to like him. Soon enough, when our parents got busy, we would sneak into my room and spend time together. I loved how he paid so much attention to me and always wanted to do silly things with me. On my 15th birthday, Lucas was the only one to remember my birthday, and he got me my first present in 3 years. I was so happy that he remembered that I hugged him longer than I had hugged anyone in a long time. I felt like I mattered once more and decided to forget about what my parents were doing wrong. I mean, Lucas cares, so I was good. A year passed by, and I looked forward to my 16th birthday. With Lucas, of course. "You should throw a sweet 16 party," he suggested, but I refused. I suggested that we invite a few friends and have fun with them. He bought into the idea, and we started planning for my birthday. A week before my birthday, it was my brother's birthday as usual. He was turning 4, and my parents told me that they were going to throw a party for him, as they always did. They told me that they wanted me to be there, as they had noticed that I was always absent on his birthdays. When it was time for the party to begin, I locked myself in my room and went to sleep. The next morning, they told me how displeased they were with my behavior, but I didn't care. I was glad that they finally felt the same way I had been feeling for the past 3 years. I wish they felt bad enough to ask me why I had suddenly grown cold, but they didn't seem to care, and just felt I was being a normal, rebellious teenager. Ugh, they're so old-fashioned. I continued with my birthday plans, and I couldn't wait to spend time with Lucas and my other friends. He told me that camping would be a good idea since my birthday falls on the school holiday. I liked the idea, but I also needed to get permission from my parents without letting them know that it was for my birthday. So I lied. We were having dinner when I brought it up. I told them that it was a school camp. That had to be the dumbest lie in the universe, as they saw right through it and called me out on the lie. "You do know that we know that's not true, right?" my dad asked. I felt stupid. Not only did I refuse to attend my brother's birthday as they had requested, but they just caught me lying as well. Then my mom mentioned that we were going on a family vacation to the beach house they just bought on some island. What? A family vacation? Why now? I replied that I wasn't interested and they could go without me. My dad told me it was for us to bond as a family for the next week, and he went ahead and gave me 2 options. It was either I went on the vacation with them or I would be grounded till school resumed. Either way, my camp plan was going to fail. I called Lucas that night, crying, and told him everything that had happened. "Why did they mess up all my birthdays?" I cried out. After calming them down, Lucas told me that he would call everyone that we had invited to cancel. Then he went on to tell me that he would tell his dad to ask mine if he could come along with us. I told him that if he could, I would be happy. The good news? Lucas was allowed to come with us, and we left in my dad's private jet for the beach house. The beach house was so huge. It had a big pool, and all the rooms had nice ocean views. The next day was my birthday, and even though I wasn't going to spend the day as I wanted, Lucas was around, and that was all that mattered. We settled in to have dinner that evening when my dad asked Lucas about the school camp. I raised an eyebrow. Were they trying to embarrass me? Lucas looked at me, not knowing what to say. There was no school camp. I made it all up because I didn't want to be. I stopped when I remembered that I didn't want them to know my birthday was the next day. I didn't expect what happened next. My dad insisted that we play hide and seek. He said that it would help ease the tension in the room and that I loved playing it when I was younger. Before I could say anything, Lucas told him that it was a great idea. I looked at Lucas, wondering why he had suddenly switched sides, but he just winked at me. My mom picked up my little brother and everyone got up to go and hide. I counted to 10 and then started searching for everyone. After about 5 minutes, I found Lucas hiding in my bedroom, and he joined me in looking for the others. We searched for over 30 minutes and couldn't find my parents. I told Lucas that I was tired, and I went to my phone upstairs so I could call my parents when he suddenly screamed my name from the kitchen downstairs. I ran downstairs to the kitchen and Lucas was nowhere to be found. I started screaming, "Lucas! Lucas, what happened? Where are you?" I panicked and called my parents, but their lines were switched off. I was about to go back to the living room when I saw a note on the kitchen counter beside Lucas's phone. It read, "We have your family and your boyfriend. If you call for help, you'll never see them again. We can see you." I felt cold shivers run down my spine. Was I being watched right now? Who had my family and Lucas? What was I going to do? I had so many questions running through my mind, and I was so scared. The doorbell suddenly rang, and I shuddered. I picked up a knife and slowly opened the door. There was no one there, but a small box with a piece of paper inside read, "Go to the garage and wait for our next instructions. If you leave before we tell you to or try anything funny, you won't see your family or your boyfriend again." Shakily, I walked to the garage. I was almost crying. I sat down, and immediately, the garage was shut automatically. The lights came on, and I saw a whiteboard a few steps away from me with something written on it. I walked to it, and on it was written, "You can only choose one. Your family or your boyfriend. Who's it gonna be, Bridget?" How did they know my name? Why are they telling me to choose? Didn't they say that they would let everyone go if I didn't call for help or leave? What's going on? Who could do this to my family? My mind flashed back to all the scary stories I had seen about situations like this, and I started crying. After a long while, I looked at my cell phone. It was a few minutes to midnight. I had been in the garage for over an hour. Should I call the police? Were they torturing my family and Lucas already? Without thinking, I started to dial 911 when suddenly the garage door started to open, and I saw Lucas holding his side with his right hand and the garage door remote in his left hand. I ran to him as he fell to his knees and helped him up. "What happened? Are you hurt? I'm afraid," I said all at once. He told me that he got hurt from fighting off 2 guys that held him captive, and that he tricked them into the woods so he could come get me and take me to where they kept my family before they got back. He said he had dialed 911 already and the police would soon be here. He asked me to take him into the living room as he could no longer walk. With his arm over my shoulder, I made for the living room. As I opened the door and said, "Lights on," I was greeted with shouts of, "Happy Sweet 16, Bridget!" I almost died from shock. My whole family was there on the sofa. And that wasn't all. My friends who I had called to cancel camp night were there. The whole place was decorated and there was a cake on the center table. I turned to look at Lucas and he was all right. He had poured ketchup on his shirt to deceive me. My parents started walking towards me and I ran to hug them. "Happy Sweet 16, Princess. We love you." They told me how they had planned it all along since the day I started planning with Lucas. And they had gotten Lucas to come with us even before I said so because they didn't want me to run away. They apologized for not having enough time for me and promised to do better. For the first time since he was born, I gave my brother a loving hug. My sweet 16 couldn't have gone better, besides the scary kidnapping part. I told my parents never to pull such a prank on me again, though. This was scary, but everyone put their heart into the planning, and that meant a lot to me.
Hi, I'm Nadia, and my fate was almost determined by old family traditions that I just couldn't fight. You might ask why? Well, my hands were tied because my mother was dying. Okay, but let me back up a bit and start from the beginning. Everything went downhill the day I read my mother's diary and discovered all the secrets she was hiding. I grew up in a pretty traditional and old-fashioned family, but we were very happy. I was the youngest, and my parents and 2 older brothers always gave me all the attention I needed. However, our happiness didn't last. A few years back, my father passed away. My hero, who taught me everything in life, including math, science, and the meaning of life. He died serving our country in a foreign land. He wasn't only my hero. His death turned him into a national hero, too. I was devastated at losing him. Dad was my everything, and I was his little girl. I miss him so much, and there are so many nights where I still cry about him dying. It feels like he's left this big hole in my life. A little while after Dad's death, my 2 older brothers started new jobs and moved into their own houses with their families. I stayed with my mom, who was heartbroken, not only about losing Dad, but also that her 2 boys had up and left, too. Everything turned upside down on that fateful day when my mom felt a little dizzy and had to go lie down. Ever since then, she was always tired, way too tired to do any of the housework that brought her so much joy, so I had to take over all the household chores for her. We went to see so many doctors, and they did every possible test. Waiting to find out what it could be was absolute torture, but they figured out what was wrong and assured us that many people survive that illness and even thrive, and that she was in good hands. I held on to that notion with both hands. I mean, what would I do without my mom? Eventually, they let her go home. She needed to rest, and I promised to take good care of her. After all, my brothers were too busy with their jobs and their own lives to even worry about her. The other day, while taking care of my mom, I dropped an empty glass on the carpet by mistake and saw something stuck between the mattress and the bed. What could it be? I wondered if it was maybe an old book that she was reading. After dinner, my mom fell fast asleep, so I tried to take the book out and put it back on her bookshelf, only to find it had a little lock. How odd! I got really curious, so I opened it, ever so slightly, only to discover it wasn't a book at all. Oh my, it was my mother's old diary. I laughed. My mother was so unpredictable. I mean, why would she have a diary? I was dying to read it, but I put it back immediately. It was wrong, and I didn't want her to suspect anything. As the days went on, my curiosity had gotten so bad that I started dreaming about what might be inside the diary. So one night, after my mom had gone to sleep, I couldn't wait a moment longer. I just had to take a peek. I took the diary to my room, sat down on my bed, and started reading it. It had every detail I'd ever hoped for about my dad, all about how he came back from the war and saw her, how they fell in love. As I read this, tears of joy ran down my face. I suddenly had a thought and rushed to the very end to see if she had written anything recently. After all, she was sick and she never really talked about what she was going through. Opening that diary was a mistake I still regret even today. Because the more I read, the more I found out things that I never wanted to know. The first shocking thing I discovered, my mom was dying. How could she keep this a secret from us? I couldn't believe it. As far as I was concerned, her health was getting better. I closed the diary, and I hugged my pillow really tight. I was gonna be left in this world all alone. Why was everyone leaving me? That night, I cried myself to sleep. When I woke up a few hours later, my eyes were swollen. I didn't feel like getting out of bed or doing anything at all. I turned my head to the side of my bed, and the diary was still there. I opened it, and I started reading some more. I thought that I had already read the worst thing that I could possibly find in there, but then my heart stopped for the second time. Not only was my mom dying in secret, but she had also written a will. I found it, hidden in a small envelope that she had clipped onto the diary. My heart was pounding as I started reading what was inside the will. With respect to our traditions, I am leaving everything I have to my dear boys. Such strong young men. I'm so proud of them. I ran through the pages again and again, looking for any mention of me, but it was nowhere to be found. I was in complete shock. My mom didn't even acknowledge me. I couldn't believe that I meant this little to my mother. Why were her dear boys so much more important? Did she take no notice of who took care of her day and night? I crawled back under my bedsheets and cried and cried. I wasn't sure how to handle knowing what I'd discovered. I mean, she was dying. I couldn't just demand my share of the will when my mom was preparing for her death. I had to take care of her, but did she even want me to? But she told me she loved me all the time. I was so conflicted, and my head was spinning. For days, I was almost half a person, going through the motions every day, cleaning the house, preparing dinner for my mom, changing her wet headcloth, sitting by her bed, reading her books. But I was an empty shell. My mind was running through all these questions on an endless loop. While I was listening to the TV one evening, I heard this preacher say that we must elevate ourselves for the ones we love. We must forgive without expecting anything in return, especially when they need us the most. For some reason, that resonated with me, and I couldn't stop thinking about my mom. Even though it was difficult, I had to be strong for her, because I loved her, and her final days needed to be filled with as much joy as possible, not sorrow. We had enough sorrow in our home already. The words, "with respect to our traditions," in the diary kept repeating in my head over and over again. I had to find out what she meant. I did some research on the internet and in the library about our culture, and I found out that for many years, that's how we as a people lived. That's how she was. That's who she was. My mom was the embodiment of our traditions. Respect your elders, wash your hands, pray, holiday dinners. All of these were most important to her. Of course, this wouldn't be any different. I loved her as she was, with all my heart. Accepting this was hard, but the reality was that my mother needed me most at this time, and I just had to let it go. On the next holiday, my two brothers came home, and I prepared a good old-fashioned family dinner. My mom even joined us when it was ready. We sat down together to eat. I looked at my brothers as they were enjoying the dinner I had made. They were laughing, happy and unbothered. They showered my mom with sweet words, and I could see how happy it made her feel. Shortly after, she went to her room as she got tired. I stayed there with my two brothers, staring at them with anger in my eyes. They asked me what was going on, and before I knew it, I just blew up in their faces. I called them every hurtful name under the sun, and then I started shouting at them saying, "Mom left everything to you two. How could she completely ignore me like that? She has left me nothing. Doesn't she love me?" My brothers were confused, and after my outburst, I decided to tell them what I'd discovered. Apparently, they already knew that she was dying, but they were equally surprised about the will. My older brother said, in a very stern voice, "Don't tell her you know. She doesn't need to worry, especially during this time. Plus, arguing with her won't lead anywhere. And you as well. We'll make it right. You are our family, our little sister. You're one of us. Did you ever doubt that we'd take care of each other? There are so few of us left. We must stick together, and you can come live with us." My other brother nodded and smiled. We hugged for a long time. That was 2 years ago. My mom passed away soon after that holiday. I still, however, feel her presence with me. I can't say that I was mad at her because of the will. After all, my brothers gave me my fair share of it without hesitation. They told me that nothing in the world can come between us, especially not money. Regardless of her commitment to traditions, I don't doubt her love to me because I felt it with every touch, every word, every look.